Yeah, order. You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man.
Hello, good evening. How much did those at the top of the Conservative Party know of the behaviour of an alleged serial bully in their midst? The parties insisted it wasn't aware of serious accusations against Mark Clark until weeks before a young activist, Elliott Johnson, took his own life, having previously complained he was bullied by Clark. Well, tonight the party's position looks increasingly under pressure. The former party chair, Sayeeda Warsi, has revealed she wrote to her successor, Grant Shapps, 8 months ago, complaining about Clark and demanding action be taken against him. Tonight we hear from another man who says he complained about Clark's bullying back in 2014 to no effect. We'll be talking to Ray Johnson about his son's suicide in a moment, but first, the latest from James Clayton.
The Conservative bullying scandal is now planted firmly on the doorstep of this building, Conservative Party headquarters. Allegations of bullying, sexual harassment and blackmail by the former Conservative activist Mark Clark have been splashed across the nation's front pages. Last week, a Newsnight investigation heard from Ben Howlett MP. He said he'd raised bullying allegations with former party chairman Grant Shapps and the current party chairman Lord Feldman as early as 2010, 5 years before the suicide of Elliott Johnson catapulted similar accusations into the public domain. That Newsnight report prompted the response from CCHQ that the current chairman, Lord Feldman, had been wholly unaware of Clark's bullying before a tranche of formal complaints had been received in August of this year.
The spokesman told us, "We've been checking and rechecking, but we haven't been able to find any records of complaints that were made but not dealt with, but we're determined to get to the bottom of what has happened."
How exhaustive have these checks actually been, though? Newsnight has had a look at how CCHQ has dealt with some of the complaints made over the last 5 years. They show, at best, incompetence by Conservative Central Office, and at worst, an attempt to conceal how much senior Conservatives knew about Clark. Over the last week, it has emerged that warnings about Clark stretched back as far as 2010. Newsnight disclosed that the official candidates report on Clark included detail of aggressive behaviour bordering on violence. Tonight, Newsnight has learnt that the then Tory chair Sayeeda Warsi, as well as Lord Feldman, were handed a written account of an incident in which Clark allegedly threatened to destroy the career of Ben Howlett, then chair of the Tory youth wing Conservative Future. Howlett, now MP for Bath, would not comment on the account, but an activist who saw it said it was one of a series of allegations of bullying. Lord Feldman allegedly said at the time the matter would be taken seriously. Clark denies all allegations of bullying. Today it emerged that another complaint had been made about Mark Clark to CCHQ before the official internal inquiry in August. The complainant, Baroness Warsi, the former party chairman, she handed a letter that she had sent to Grant Shapps to the Guardian newspaper. It cites a tweet by Mark Clark which implies that Warsi had offended a Jewish member of a local Conservative party, she claims unfairly. Baroness Warsi said the tweet had led to her receiving abusive messages and allegations of anti-Semitism. In the letter, she asks Shapps what action you intend to take against Mr. Clark. She claims the matter was not properly handled and Clark continued as director of Road Trip. Mark Clark contradicts Warsi's description of events and claims that she has a personal vendetta against him. 6 months before the letter, in the summer of 2014, a young Conservative activist who had been on a number of road trips was threatened with political ruin by Clark. Clark told him that he would never work at CCHQ and that if he tried to ever get a job with an MP, Clark would personally intervene to prevent such promotion. The young activist wrote to an employee in CCHQ talking of Clark's bullying behaviour. He wrote that Clark had threatened to ruin him attempting to damage my reputation and trying to remove me from politics. The Conservative employee then sent a response saying, "Hi, are you content if I share your email with other colleagues? Staff members, not Road Trip 2015 volunteers."
I was hoping to hear someone telling me how to move forward, how to get past it, what options I had in terms of making a complaint or speaking to someone about any way to overcome the issues and the problems that I'd had. But there was nothing, and it was just very disappointing, I think, and upsetting.
Newsnight knows of other complaints that were made to CCHQ in 2014. In a statement given to us tonight, a Conservative spokesman said that an investigation is currently underway and it is not appropriate to comment until we can establish the facts.
James Clayton with that report. Well, earlier this evening I spoke to Ray Johnson, the father of Elliott Johnson, who took his own life. I began by asking him if, after fighting for 9 weeks to get his son's story heard, he felt like things were starting to change.
Things have been changing day by day, week by week, I think, from when we first heard of Elliott's unfortunate tragic death. We couldn't get to grips with what had happened. But within a few days, evidence started to appear that suggested that something was untoward, very untoward, was amiss. And we picked up the story and decided that we had to dig deeper because we weren't getting any answers out of Conservative Central Office. And we needed to find out what the truth was behind Elliott's death and what had actually happened leading up to it. And as events unfolded over the days and weeks, it became sort of like a quagmire, almost like a dry rot, affecting the Conservative Party in many ways, with many people being affected adversely and other people who were doing the bullying and the intimidating. It became very clear to us that they were being protected, and if not tolerated, encouraged by what Mark Clark and other people were doing within the Conservative Party to the activists.
Those at the top of the Tory party say they'd been wholly unaware. They said that they checked and rechecked and found no record of complaints against Mark Clark. Well,
that's contrary to what I have heard.
Why do you think that was?
I think that Mark Clark was allowed to carry on the way he was because he was being protected by people within CCHQ, and people were pulling his strings. And he was getting the results they wanted leading up to the general election, i.e. the 2015 road trip. And because of that, they were quite happy to overlook what he was doing.
What do you think should happen now?
Well, it's too late for my son, obviously, and in some respects it's too late for some of the young activists who've been badly treated by the Conservative Party, badly let down, in fact. But what needs to be done now, the Conservative CCHQ, and I think this is endemic in other political parties too, they really need to look at their practices and processes and make sure that when young activists, because they are young people, we're talking about some of these activists maybe only 16 or 17 years old, they're youngsters, and they are being managed and manipulated by people who are in their 30s and older. We have to make sure that when these young people make complaints, they're listened to. And by sweeping their issues under the carpet and ignoring their complaints, doesn't solve problems for them. It actually makes things worse.
Grant Shapps was the one who brought Mark Clark back into the fold in 2014. What do you think should happen to Grant Shapps now?
Well, Grant Shapps really has to look to his position. It's undoubtedly true that he knew what was going on, I think.
They're conducting an inquiry at the moment. Do you have the confidence that that will get to the bottom of this?
Absolutely not. I can't see how their inquiry can have any veracity at all. I wrote to Lord Feldman when I heard that they were conducting their own internal inquiry, headed up by another Conservative insider. I complained that an inquiry run by themselves without independent oversight can't possibly be considered to be valid. And I put it to Lord Feldman that this would just be another cover-up.
Are you surprised that this was allowed to happen in a mainstream political party?
I'm shocked. You know, these people are effectively the lawmakers in this country. They pass laws to ensure that people are protected from bullying and harassment in the workplace, and yet they seem to feel that they're above the law and they can continue in the way they've, which must be endemic within the political party process in this country.
You were worried about Elliott going into politics?
I was concerned because I thought, well, getting involved in politics is one thing, but there may not be a long-term career in it. And I did say on many occasions to Elliott, and quite often whenever I emailed him, at the bottom line would always be, get a proper job. Because I was keen for him to get a career outside of politics, and as he developed, as he matured, as his skill set grew, then he could come back into politics and take it from there. But I must also say that when he came back to us early June of this year and told us, announced to us, I suppose, that he'd been offered a job as a political editor for Conservative Way Forward, I was very proud.
How does it feel for you now to be thrown into the spotlight? You've turned detective in a way, trying to figure out what happened.
Well, it's changed our lives. We will do forever. We've lost our son. He was a wonderful chap. Lots of potential, lots of friends, and it all seems that it's all to naught in some respects. But I'm not the kind of person that will put this aside and forget about it. I want to get to the bottom of what happened to my son, and I will fight for his cause and fight for justice for him and for the other activists, because as the days and the weeks passed by, we realised that many more youngsters were coming out of the woodwork and saying that they'd also complained and nothing had been done. And this fight is for Elliott and for his friends, because many were his friends who had actually been intimidated, harassed, blackmailed, subjugated to sexual abuse for a long time.
Ray Johnson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Ray Johnson, Elliott's dad, talking to me a little bit earlier.